From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 9 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday night. I'm Russ Riesinger. Tonight, a top aide to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says Democrats are moving closer to a deal with the White House on a big stimulus package. That bill would include billions more for COVID testing and a new round of stimulus checks, as well as money for schools and reinstatement of federal unemployment benefits. Now, this comes as there's new evidence tonight that President Trump continues to ignore the need for tests and other measures to stop the spread. CBS's Ben Tracy reports from the White House.
With coronavirus cases hitting dangerous new levels across the country, President Trump says Americans are simply over it.
People are pandemic'd out. You know that? They're pandemic'd out.
New documents released today by Congress show the White House was well aware that COVID cases were rapidly rising again after Labor Day. The president continued to hold large, maskless rallies and downplay the virus.
We're rounding the turn on COVID.
Reports from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, shared with governors but not made public, show urgent appeals to increase testing and institute mask mandates. A September 13th report sounded the alarm about Wisconsin, stating virus transmission is seen in all areas of the state. 4 days later, President Trump held a rally there and said this:
"We're doing a great job."
The White House task force met again this afternoon as cases continue to spike. But now President Trump is calling his own health experts, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, idiots. After severe backlash, today the president tried to change his tune.
But he's a nice guy. The only thing I say is he's a little bit sometimes not a team player.
The president prefers his hand-picked advisor, Dr. Scott Atlas. He continues to clash with other members of the task force, including Dr. Deborah Birx, who has largely been sidelined and reportedly asked for Atlas to be removed.
I'm not a professional tweet writer.
He is under fire for tweeting that masks don't work. Twitter removed it for spreading misinformation. Infighting on the task force is now public, with Admiral Brett Giroir, who heads the nation's testing efforts, tweeting the hashtag #MasksWork. Yes. President Trump is now calling Dr. Atlas fantastic, and he says that the various experts on the task force simply have different views. Ben Tracy, CBS News, the White House.
Tonight, 9 more COVID-19 related deaths to report, along with another 700 new cases across the state. 4 of those deaths are right here in Yellowstone County, where the COVID-related death toll has now reached 81. The state total now stands at 273. Well, Yellowstone County seems to break COVID records each day across Montana, including today, as the county surpassed the 5,000 case mark. In the first 18 days of October, the county reported more than 1,800 new cases. Last week, the average daily rate of new infection per 100,000 exceeded 67. That's a jump from about 36 3 weeks ago. Over the weekend, Together Billings Clinic and St. Vincent Healthcare hit a new record: 119 people hospitalized, 59 of those Yellowstone County residents, 29 people in the ICU, and 21 of them on ventilators. Well, today, Governor Bullock again urged Montanans to continue COVID-19 precautions for the benefit of medical workers. He also laid out the state's initial plan for distributing a COVID vaccine once it does become available. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian has more.
Montana leaders say the challenges of dealing with COVID-19 have been even greater for frontline healthcare workers. At a news conference Tuesday, one of those workers talked about the burden of responding to the virus.
All of our job stressors are just magnified as we learn to do things like CPR in head-to-toe PPE, or we learn new methods of putting patients on ventilators while the doctor's hands are inside a plastic box. Or as we have to explain to yet another tearful family member that, no, you can't visit right now, but we'll hold the phone up for a FaceTime call.
Charlotte Skinner, an ER nurse from St. Peter's Health, called on all Montanans to come together across political divides to follow public health guidelines.
I'm asking you today to stop segregating yourselves into maskers and anti-maskers, and to stand with us on the common ground of science and evidence, which is clearly telling us that masking works.
Governor Steve Bullock again said Tuesday he did not want to implement new statewide COVID restrictions, saying that would be unfair to those already doing the right things. But he urged everyone to follow the guidelines that have already been put in place.
They need all of us to do more.
Also at Tuesday's news conference, Bullock provided information about the state's draft plan for distributing a COVID-19 vaccine once it's available. Leaders would first direct the vaccine to healthcare and other essential workers, and those at increased risk of getting COVID or experiencing a severe case. Bullock said there are still many unknowns about the eventual vaccine. The state will put together a vaccine coordination team to work on refining the plan.
At the state level, we'll be doing everything we possibly can to make sure that Montana's prepared for when a safe and effective vaccine arrives to our state.
Bullock also announced the state has distributed more than $1 billion in unemployment benefits to more than 100,000 Montanans since the start of the pandemic. That's more than 20 times the benefits they distributed during the same period last year. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
Well, state leaders say the high rate of positive tests shows how present the virus is in our state. The goal now is to make sure people who have had potential contact can get tests when they need them. MSU Billings now has a new chancellor, and she's already making history. Stephanie Hickswaw currently serves as president of Northwest College in Powell, Wyoming. Under her leadership, Northwest College has achieved the highest completion rate in its history. Hickswaw served for 7 years as president of Miles City Community College. When she assumes the chancellorship of MSU Billings, she'll be the first woman to hold that position since the university's founding in 1927.
The first woman president at MSUB is certainly an honor. I think that the position at this time in its history fits my leadership style and experience very well, and so it's an honor to be selected.
Hickswaw will begin her duties January 11th. She succeeds Dan Edelman, who stepped down in August due to health issues. Yesterday, in our coverage of Montana's 2020 race for governor, we told you about the personal history of Democratic candidate Mike Cooney. Well, tonight, in the second part of his two-part series, MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison gives us a closer look at the personal and professional background of Republican candidate Greg Gianforte.
If you've heard Greg Gianforte talk at all, you've no doubt heard Montana's only congressman say he's a business guy, or something like this.
I've spent my entire career creating good-paying jobs, mostly here in Montana.
Which is very much true. Gianforte and his wife Susan co-founded Right Now Technologies in Bozeman in the mid-1990s, a firm that developed and sold software that enabled companies to do customer service electronically, just as the internet took off. It grew into an international company with 500 employees in Bozeman and was sold to Oracle Corporation in 2012 for $1.8 billion, earning the Gianfortes many millions. But before the Gianfortes moved from the East Coast to Bozeman in 1994, they had already launched and sold 4 technology startups, including Brightwork, a software networking firm purchased by the computer security giant McAfee.
We built that. We ended up with about 150,000 installations around the world. And that business was purchased by McAfee, the antivirus company. And then I ran the North American business for McAfee for a period of time.
Gianforte grew up in a Philadelphia suburb and went to college at Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the Hudson River from Manhattan. He earned degrees in electrical engineering and computer science and calls himself a genuine geek. But while Gianforte grew up on the East Coast, he says the junior high school trip to Montana, when he spent the summer in the backcountry near Red Lodge, convinced him this is where he wanted to live. It just took him a while to get here. The Gianfortes had 3 children when they moved to Bozeman, and their 4th child was born there.
The whole concept was we wanted to raise our family in Montana. And I thought the internet created an opportunity to really remove the barriers of geography. And I came here and people said, well, no one's ever done that before, Greg. But I saw the potential.
In addition to starting Right Now Technologies in Montana, the Gianfortes also got involved in politics, giving money to Republican candidates and advocating for many conservative causes. They also have a family charitable foundation that has donated nearly $80 million to some of those causes, but also to local schools, churches, and social services. It wasn't until 2016 that Gianforte finally ran for office, losing the governor's race to Democratic incumbent Steve Bullock. 6 months later, he won Montana's only congressional seat in a special election to succeed Ryan Zinke, who had been appointed Interior Secretary by President Trump. Now Gianforte is back for a second try at the governorship, pitching his business experience as his main selling point. Montana voters are deciding right now if that's the right resume. In Helena, I'm Mike Dennison for MTN News.
Also on the ballot in the governor's race is Libertarian Lyman Bishop, a Kalispell businessman. Just 2 weeks from election night, and nearly half of the ballots mailed out across Yellowstone County are back in the hands of elections officials now. Yellowstone County Election Administrator Brett Rutherford tells us officials have checked in 38,000 ballots. Says there are another 4,000 to 5,000 yet to be counted just today. Yellowstone County mailed out just over 90,000 ballots for the general election. Rutherford says walk-in ballot drop-off has been steady at the Montana Pavilion, and about 1,000 voters have shown up to vote in person. Across Montana, more than 200,000, or about 1/3 of eligible voters, have returned their ballots so far. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks wants to move forward and drain Lake Elmo in Billings to rid the reservoir of invasive Asian clams. Now, that lake could be dry next winter, but that could also create an opportunity for officials to make some improvements to the state park. Q2's Mitch Legge has more.
In Billings, the shoreline of the 60-acre Lake Elmo has been dropped by about 2 to 3 feet in an effort to eradicate Asian clams, an invasive species first found in the waters in 2019. A new plan from Fish, Wildlife and Parks wants to drain the lake in its entirety next winter in an effort to completely eradicate the clams. The invasive Asian clams have mostly been found in less than 6 feet of water at Lake Elmo. Fish, Wildlife and Parks biologists believe that draining the lake will kill off the rest of the clams, whose enemies are the cold and lack of food that would normally be floating in the water. Lake Elmo is completely fed from Yellowstone River water that enters and exits the lake through farm irrigation channels. FWP says the invasive clams have not been found anywhere either above or downstream from the lake. The plan involves completely draining the lake next winter to kill the clams, and while it's empty, take the opportunity to do some improvements to the state park, including more jetties for handicap accessible fishing and a boardwalk on the part of the property along Lake Elmo Drive. Public comment is open for 30 days starting Tuesday on the environmental assessment plan for the future of Lake Elmo.
In 30 days, all of those comments will be considered, and the regional supervisor here will make a final decision based on all of those comments and all of the assessments that are done by our biological staff here.
If the regional supervisor makes the decision to drain the lake, it will not impact any farmers or ranchers who rely on its water for irrigation. In Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thanks, Mitch. If that plan is approved, the park amenities could be completed by the start of the spring of 2022. Still ahead on the MTN 9 o'clock news, from A positive to B positive. Learn why it may be more important than ever to know your blood type. But first, another round of snow and cold headed this way. Bob's in next to tell you all about it.